Hello everyone and welcome to our very first podcast here at VATCentric. We've got two very esteemed guests today. We're very happy to have them here. The first one we have is Faisal Musa, sitting on my right, and on the left we have Hamza Sheikh, also who is my business partner. So today we've come together. We want to give a little bit of our insight as tax professionals into the landscape here in the UAE, and hopefully we can give you some informative content, some information that you can take away and dwell on as well for future. So first of all, I'd like to bring on Faisal. Faisal is a tax professional, works specifically in indirect taxes or VAT out here in the UAE. So I'd like to start off and ask you, Faisal, I know you worked out in the UK initially first. You had a brief stint out in Saudi as well. You went back and you've come back to the UAE. Give us a little bit about why you chose to do that, what your journey's been like so far, and how your career has panned out over these past few years.
Thanks, Tan. Nice to be here. So I've been in tax for about best part of 25 years now. And I decided to move out to Saudi Arabia in 2016 when they decided they wanted to implement VAT. The government in Saudi decided that they wanted to diversify away from sort of oil and gas. So they implemented VAT. So that was really the trigger for me to move over to Saudi, both on a personal note, but also on a career note as well. So I spent about 3 years in Saudi, and then I went back to the UK. And I had this urge to return back to the region. And it was really, for me, it was really all about timing. And I've seen how the tax landscape's been developing in the Middle East. I just thought right now was the best timing. The UK has had tax and VAT for quite a number of years, quite a few decades. And in the region, it's quite a new phenomenon, but the pace of change was just incredibly quick. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to take my 20-odd years of experience, try and influence decision-making of tax policy, businesses on how they approach tax, and how they remain efficient in a tax landscape, which once upon a time was known as a tax-free landscape. That was really my reason of returning to the region. And since then, I've been here for 12 months. And I've seen an incredible pace of change. It's just really nice to be back in the region, as well as the weather and the beaches that you can enjoy, the work-life balance. It's just nice to be part of a place where the pace of change is a lot quicker. You can do things here that you just didn't have the chance of doing in the UK.
Amazing. And likewise, we have Hamza to my left here as well. Hamza took a slightly different route. I do remember we went to the same university. Yeah. You had a brief career in London. Yeah. Then all of a sudden you disappeared. And the next I heard, you were here in Dubai. And have never looked back since, have you? So Tell us a little bit about what took you out here and why you stayed.
Thank you very much, Tan, for the opportunity. Appreciate that. To be very honest with you, that's exactly what happens with tax professionals. They take a break, you don't see them, and you end up somewhere in a tax-free jurisdiction. Look, a bit of introduction. I'm a bit of a seasoned finance professional, different industries across different backgrounds, mostly in sort of reporting and tax, etc. Did my time in the UK, as most of us do, in the ropes. And then in 2014, I moved out here, one of the NHS entities, helping them sort of getting ready for the financial reporting, the tax structure, etc. And then moved on through the years into sort of a British firm there, and then from that into more of a government entity, helping them set up the tax compliance framework. Honestly, just to add to what Faisal's been saying, the region's growing at a very fast pace. There's so much happening here, which is a very good story to tell. At the same time, I think there's a lot of value add as well. And I think there's definitely for people to learn more and sort of add to the tax ecosystem. So, yeah.
Thank you for running through your CV there. Personally, myself, did a brief stint out here back in 2018-17 when VAT was being launched here. And again, as you said, there's a bit of a yearning for people with tax experience from particularly European jurisdictions. And that was part of my reason to come here and learn a bit of experience and a bit of to the VAT experience up till then. I decided to return back after 6 months. So I did my contract, had my experience. So for family reasons, so slightly to you guys. Since then, there's always been some sort of calling to say, back to the region. This is where things are happening in terms of economy, in terms of business. This is really the place to be. And it's a very forward-thinking, entrepreneurial kind of market. And we've done our bit to sort of touch with the markets as well. Being remotely, and I think the way panned out in terms of technology, it's been relatively to do that. But I think, yes, as you guys say, being out is a completely different experience, has a different lifestyle. You guys have obviously stuck around and you've returned back for a good few years now, hopefully, inshallah. If I just bring it back to you as well, in sort of a very new era now, I would say in tax, personally speaking, got a lot of digitalization going on, automation, we've heard about AI, etc. And you're very much in the midst of it here in Dubai. Can you just talk a little bit about what's on the horizon at the moment, especially in sort of the VAT space at the moment? What kind of things are you working on? And what things do you see coming on the horizon in the next couple of years?
Okay, I think that's a really good question. And at the moment, what we're seeing is just a really interesting shift landscape with regards to tax. VAT was introduced, 2018, so 7 odd years ago, VAT was introduced. We're now seeing corporate tax, seeing legislation around transfer pricing being introduced. So I just think on the tax landscape, there's just a huge shift, and it's just an interesting time to be here. Hot topic is e-invoicing. I think that will remain a hot topic. We've seen it introduced in Saudi Arabia, other parts of the world. Europe seems to be lagging a bit behind. And I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about, that not only the pace of change in the UAE, but its commitment to technology and ensuring that technology is a driver and an enabler. There's no slow-paced business in the UAE. Businesses are very forward-thinking, they're very dynamic. Whereas in the UK and in other jurisdictions, you'll find businesses that have been using older versions of ERPs, not embracing e-invoicing as quick. You've seen delays in the UK, you've seen delays in other European member states. It's not like that over here. Once there's a commitment here by the government, they stick to that date. We know that e-invoicing is coming in July 2026. There might be delays towards that, but that final deadline is just not going to shift. And I think that's one of the commitments of the region, that technology will be an enabler, it will be introduced, and in the future. So I think there will continue to be a shift. I think the region's getting a lot more sophisticated. Certainly last 10 years, since VAT was introduced and I left and I've come back, I've seen tax authorities become more sophisticated. They've sort of built out their policy departments, their audit departments, their approach to businesses. I've seen tax teams within organizations become a lot more sophisticated. A lot of compliance is now being dealt with in-house. Businesses have their own VAT teams that partner with the business to ensure that they're efficient from a tax perspective. And something that they've done in the last 5 years. I mean, you just don't see this sort of pace of change anywhere else. And this will continue now that we've got corporate taxes, in-house tax teams. The FTA will just continue to become more and more sophisticated. They've managed to build out teams taking sort of best practices from Europe, from UK, from Australia, from India, from Malaysia, and almost bringing it in-house into the UAE and almost creating a super tax authority. And in the space of 5 years, it's absolutely incredible.
What would you say about this? So obviously, traditionally, the UAE, Dubai, etc., has been seen as a tax haven, very no taxes, I guess, when it first came on the map. But now taxes are being introduced, as you've said. How do you think the market is responding to that? And do you think that could deter business from setting up here? Or do you think there's more that Dubai's got to offer, even though taxes have come into play now?
So I regard it as, haven in respects. Yes, there's taxes now. There's tax, but if we just look at the rates to begin with, 5% is the lowest rate in the world, other than countries that haven't introduced VAT or GST.
Yeah.
It's the lowest rate in the world. The corporate tax rate, 9%.
Yeah.
Very low, very competitive. So I don't think that will deter businesses in any way, because the UAE as a market is just an incredible place to be. It's a good place to do business. Location-wise, it's perfect. It's based in the middle of so many key locations. So if anything, I think it would just continue to be a hub where businesses invest, where businesses move. And if we look at the overall development of the UAE over the last 20 years, it's just attracted, a number of businesses, and not just from any certain jurisdiction, but from everywhere. And taxes is not going to slow that down.
I think, to be back to what Faisal was saying, I think taxes actually reflect the strength of an economy. The ability to actually tax, and it will show how resilient it is to, But the other thing is the UAE, the region's very business friendly. You'll see a lot of sort of businesses moving out here for different purposes. And just testament to that is the fact that if you look at the corporate tax reporting, where in Europe you'd be adding back depreciation, here you're actually allowed to deduct it. So it makes it much more uniform, easier to align your tax accounts to your, accounts. And it's a very simple approach, which is very business friendly.
Yeah.
And, as Faisal mentioned, it's evolving at a fast pace. Over the 5 years, I've seen the teams grow. There's a lot more bulletins coming out. There's a lot more interaction with the tax community, and sort of, weekly messages about, that they want to hear from the taxpayer themselves, which is a much more interactive approach. And it's really sort of changing the landscape, making it more efficient on both.
So you're saying, even though taxes have been introduced here, the approach they've taken is to simplify as much as possible, make it as user-friendly as possible.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's part of the criticism of the tax landscape is sometimes very complicated. It's not easy for the layman to understand. But you're saying they're very forward-thinking here, making it as easy as possible and giving the support?
Absolutely. I think that's been from a top-down approach.
Yeah.
If you notice, from the policy all the way down to the person who is working in a bakala, they will all understand the concept of tax.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest challenge, I think, when it comes to implementing a tax where in a region you never actually had tax before.
Yeah, yeah.
Completely agree. I think one of the benefits that the UAE and the FTA have leveraged is looking at other jurisdictions around the world, seeing what they've done and implementing that, but just in a very dynamic way. So they've looked at the UK, because a lot of the legislation was based on that. They've looked at other jurisdictions and they thought, right, how do we implement that in this way? So they've almost squeezed the last 20 or 30 years of implementation in any other country, and they've just done it here in a much shorter timeline. Like I mentioned, public clarifications, private clarifications, engagement with businesses. This very from 2018 to today, you wouldn't think that this is a tax authority. You think this is a very mature tax authority. Their approach to businesses, the way they audit, their policy, and it's just their continuous efforts and taxpayers. So I think this will, if anything, it will attract businesses. Region.
We're saying tax doesn't have to be taxing.
Yeah.
It's probably best in the region, and the way they've actually executed the strategy is probably the best version of it here.
Yeah, get away from tax. Anywhere you go, taxes are going to be following you.
Yeah, it's death and taxes, isn't it? Two things you can't get away with.
Well, now there's a global minimum tax we have to pay. That is coming in, We have to be ready for that,
Yes, as part of the UAE's intention or strategy, members of the OECD countries as well. I still have to bring a taxation policy, which they have done, and a minimum tax, as you've said. So this is, I guess, a few footsteps they're taking towards that direction. And I think it was time it was going to have to do at some point, but it's coming at a very low rate just to get, I guess, businesses more adapted to it and keep it at a rate where it's not deterring business and it's not significant, I guess, to the bottom line, etc. Having to cost in transactions and things. So that's helped. And I think from my observation, with the period that the FTA has been born very much into a digital era. So it's not had to adopt, and HMRC, for example, in the UK has and things. And I think they've really embraced that, haven't they? The FTA has kept everything online, the manual processes, etc. So I think that's going to only benefit it and help people.
There's a balancing act, right? Like anything else. And the way that the approach of the FTA and the Ministry of Finance has just been very strategic. They knew that taxes eventually had to land in the country, but how could they bring that in a way that wouldn't deter businesses, and how could that bring it in a way where they could almost keep that reputation of a tax-free environment but still have taxes. And I think they've done that perfectly. They've really hit that balance finally, which is to bring in taxes but at a level where it almost doesn't impact businesses. I mean, almost negligible, isn't it?
Agreed.
So are not really impacted and still benefit from that Dubai brings.
To be honest, just to add to that, there's been a very sort of administrative burden-friendly approach to what you're saying. A lot of the businesses, they've adapted this, and that's been the best thing, is that the response from the business community, that community, I've realized that actually things have become easier because they're digitalizing so many things. You're saying about e-invoicing coming in, there's a framework, there's a tax invoicing, there's something that, and that approach is pretty good because it's over, what they're doing, there's a policy to follow.
Yeah.
So it's really allowed the community to sort of know, maybes or ifs or what. No, there's a direct approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Tax has followed the overall agenda of the country, which is all about digitalisation, automation. We've seen the amount of super apps anywhere else in the world that they have over here. Like
What's a super app?
So you've got these apps now. I'll mention a few, like Kareem, for example. You can live your life off it.
Oh, right.
So in the UK, we've got Uber. Essentially, on Uber, you can call a cab and you can order some food. On the Kareem app here, you can live your life off it. You can do your money transfers, you can call a cab, you can get your cleaners in.
You can find a wife on there as well?
You can probably find a wife on it. So
Tax-free.
Yeah. So in commitment of the region, have probably had access to technology a lot longer than the UAE, yet they haven't been able to have the impact that the UAE has. Just generally around tech and digitalization. And tax is just another one of those streams that is following on that pathway. There could be e-invoicing, the tax portals. That's something we've seen even in European member states very recently. But from the outset, the FTA had its own tax portal. And with e-invoicing, that's just to be the start of a digitalized tax journey. Very soon, you'll probably see e-reporting at point onwards, have real-time reporting very soon. I'm pretty sure the UAE will be leading that journey, certainly to European member states and the UK.
Yeah. As with the experience, there's always a concern by tax authorities in general of tax fraud taking place, right? And we talk consistently in the UK about the tax gap, what the authorities think they should be collecting and what they're actually collecting. So I suppose here with the FTA being introduced into a digital era, digitalizing a lot of the taxes, they shouldn't have that issue, I suppose. So that's a good thing for them. They'll get the revenues they want. And I guess fraud will be eliminated completely. So how do you support that case?
Technology generally, once human intervention is removed, then there's a huge tax that can be closed. HMRC have tried that for a long time. Making digital in the hope of closing the tax gap. I think there was some success there, but still exists a tax gap because one thing is implementing technology, but the second part of that is how you implement it and who you capture within that sort of tech regime. And the good things about the UAE is they're looking at these jurisdictions, they're benchmarking themselves against other jurisdictions, certainly those sophisticated ones, which have already gone through that journey, and then implementing it in a much more of an advanced way. So they sort of step forward, take 2 steps forward, and then implement that in.
Yeah. I think it's going to close the gap, to be honest. But then what we'll have to do is, as a tax authority, challenges need to be addressed, especially from a cross-border point of view as well. Because across the border, you've got different member states. For example, look at the GCC framework. You've got member states who are implementing at different rates, different parts of the times of the year, different years. Qatar is just onboarding or coming online soon, I think. And then, for example, you've got Saudi in on phase 25, I think, of the invoicing journey. So I think it has to be in tandem, and there has to be a GCC sort of framework for e-invoicing as well. Because I think the cross-border is where you'll have a little bit of challenges. And just that PEPL framework that the UAE tax is basing their invoicing on, we then have to see, will it marry up to the other e-invoicing regimes around the world? Just to point out, this podcast isn't to find me a wife. That's outside the scope of this engagement.
That's going to be a different podcast. We're longer than an hour for that. We'll do call-ins as well. If I just bring it back to your experience being in the UAE for such a long time, I'll count an argument out to you. Some people say Dubai, it's all sensationalized, it's a hype, it's just a buzz, partly due to social media. Now, as someone who's been here for quite a long time, what your argument? Again, what's your counter argument to that? Do you actually think there is some substance to what are the claims, or actually is there stuff going on here, and is it a thriving market?
Actually, I totally sort of agree with you, in the sense that there is a lot of substance here. And that's testament to the fact that this is not an oil-based economy here. It does not rely on oil revenues. They're diversified so much in their business, and you can see that. Not just tourism, there's industries here, there's professional industry, etc. They all diversified their business activities so much, they don't rely on that. So it's not just the hype. there's a lot of sort of organic business, the GDP.
Yeah. And the real business is being set up here. And would you say it's been
Absolutely,
easy for them, or
Look,
are there a lot of stumbling blocks?
No, it's been relatively straightforward. And if you look at it over the years, you'll notice how quickly it is to set up and form a company and how easy it was. If anything, the region was the most, post-COVID, they were the fastest growing region. A lot of people came here to set up their freelancing companies, to set up their professional jobs or professional sort of whatever industry they're in. If anything, it's just to going back to what Faisal you mentioned, the region's very attractive from a tax financial point of view because you can base your company here and then take advantage of the tax ecosystem here. So I do with them saying it's just a hype. It's not a hype. It's actually, you're ahead of other economies in what they're doing. And that's the driving people coming in. The population growth is driven not just by house building and building properties. No, it's driven by the fact that there's sound economic policies that are coming out and they're actually helping people,
Yeah. Language helps as well, being English speaking here predominantly, a lot of English native speakers.
Absolutely. Look, it's very business friendly. It's very friendly. I've been here 11 years. I've got loads of friends from different parts of the world, including from a local background and around the world. Everyone gets along, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a fun place to be.
Just a unique place to be, isn't it? I mean, you're not going to find that anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely not.
The diversity that you get in Dubai, you're not going to find it anywhere else.
I mean, the amount of food you get. Look at the different dishes you get. That shows you how much diversity there is, and that should be celebrated.
Yeah. Can I just compare a little bit about your experience being in KSA for a while and then comparing this now to the UAE market in terms of the use of technology? We talked about e-invoicing, and KSA had a completely different model there, if I'm correct in thinking, a very centralized model. The UAE have taken a different approach, framework, etc. they've got. So what do you think sort of the pros and cons of that have been? And to what KSA's experience has been? KSA's been trying to implement it. We mentioned 25th stage now they're at. Do you think the UAE will have a similar ride, or do you think it'll be a lot smoother for them and it'll be better received?
So I think at this point, it's probably hard to tell because it's not really kicked off yet. But what I can say is the UAE would have looked at the other models, and this is something they're really good at doing, benchmarking themselves against other countries, see what they've implemented, looking at the pros and cons, and trying to do things better. So the Saudi had this hard clearance model, and there were lots of challenges with that. The UAE have decided to go for a very different type of model where they'll be less burdened. They will spread the traffic and spread the load again with essentially. So I think it's just a very different model. But I think the key thing here is that it will be, from what I think, it's going to be a lot more of a smoother journey in the UAE. And this is reflective of just generally the way the region does, the country does things. They themselves, they look at how things have gone in other regions and ensure that the challenges that exist in other parts of the world, they do it in a way that they can overcome that.
VAT here, corporation tax as well. Do you think things are going to evolve a lot more, or do you think more taxes may be introduced? Is there any insight you can give us, or anything that you may have heard in the grapevine?
So that the taxes have been introduced now. I mean, the next step for most countries is to increase rates, right? And if we look at the trends across the world, or in the GCC, let's take a look at Saudi Arabia. They introduced at 5%. They very quickly moved to 15%. They had their own reasons. They wanted to diversify away from oil. Bahrain very quickly during the COVID period, and they increased to 10%. But I think the UAE positioned itself very uniquely by not increasing its rates. It could have very easily followed Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, and it could have aligned with the 10 and 15% rates. But I think it took a conscious decision not to, because it's their strategy which is more important to them, which is almost maintaining a tax-free environment whilst having tax, the oxymoron. But, of things that can happen. Legislation can become a lot more complex. There will be a lot more engagement with businesses. I think that one of the things the tax authority is really keen on doing is engaging with businesses. And rather than policing VAT, just to partner with businesses to ensure that they understand the importance of contributing to the economy, rather than taking an aggressive approach. So I think that's one route they could take, and they probably are taking. And complexities and more sophistication around legislation. But I don't think is in a rush to introduce complexities. I think it's more important to ensure that businesses are thriving. And if that means that it takes slightly longer, then so be it. But, probably the key thing that I'd is on the way here. And e-invoicing is just a start.
I think, look, testament to that fact is the fact that the authority here has a supportive sort of role as well. Because they haven't increased the rates in comparison to the other states or member states, they're supporting businesses. That, it really helps create and foster that environment, because it can be a burden. VAT can be a burden depending on where in the chain you are. And just that it's a visionary strategy of the tax authority, help enable that and help the taxpayer digest a new concept. You go back to the fact that tax was introduced in countries hundreds of years ago, but in this region, tax is a foreign thing. So I think the approach that's been taken is a digesting approach. It's like a digestive, to which would they have our sort of digestive, McVitie's digestive or Jaffa cake moment, at that point.
What I was a little bit disappointed about was the fact that they didn't give 0 rating to food as they could have. But I suppose
not to shawarma, yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a shame, but 35% I suppose at the moment. But if the VAT rate does increase, then people losing weight here, probably they could do, isn't it? Eating less, because the prices will go up. But loosen up, brother.
Having said that, I think, on a 5%, almost in a blanket way, is their approach to simplicity.
Yeah.
They could have 0 rated food.
Yeah.
They could have exempted, of tax. But I think they just wanted to apply a simplified approach. UK has 0 rating on food, but look at the complexities that's given rise to.
It has to,
Organisations had to go to court, probably spend millions in fighting cases, whereas over here, a simplified approach, 5%, and people can just carry on with life.
I mean, I recall my time working for Sainsbury's, which is a retailer out there, and most of my day was spent trying to figure out the VAT rulings or VAT treatment of just simple products, chocolate bars, snack bars, crisps, different ingredients, etc., because the law was so complex. And even as tax advisors, we sometimes didn't know the answer ourselves. We had to take taste tests, which sometimes was a nice thing to do. But all the time. This is where the tax advisor will make their money, I suppose, as well, isn't it? Because of the complexities. So, to have simplified taxes could, people, and also I think another thing we're not mentioning is about the thresholds that they brought in, relatively quite high. So not just because they've got a VAT rate in place doesn't mean all businesses will be impacted.
Sorry, don't mention rents and how high they are.
Rates.
Oh, rates.
Yeah. Okay. So the thresholds they brought in, generally quite high, so it's not going to impact every business. Sales perspective, even the corporation tax, there's reliefs. I know you might want to expand a little bit about the reliefs for corporation tax.
Yeah, honest. One of the key ones is like you're allowed to claim 50% back on your, which is because that's part and parcel of doing business. Yeah. There is a bit of whining and dining. Seal a deal. Yeah, you go for dinner. You might go to have shawarma at Lafa afterwards. Claim 50% of that. That's great. Look at the UK. You can't claim anything on entertainment. Definitely business friendly. I'll tell you that. The other thing is, by the way, that with the corporation tax and the VAT, it's VAT, for example, rents, for example, they're exempt from VAT for personal usage, and there's very clear guidelines of what triggers commercial rents or lets, etc. Whereas in other tax jurisdictions, there's a lot more nuances and complexities.
Grey area.
So testament to the fact, and just circling back to it, the authorities done really.
Okay, so to wrap up the session, we've had great insights from experiences being in the markets, both of yourselves, from a business perspective, a tax perspective as well. So I guess just to round it up, what tips would you give to business already here, or those businesses trying to set up here as well, and how they receive or perceive tax here, the tax landscape?
So from my perspective, I think they should perceive it in a very positive approach, and in a positive light. I think taxes here are very simplified. Rates are low. It's a business-centric environment. And will thrive here. The fact that taxes exist shouldn't deter businesses, contribute to the economy wherever we are in the world. And it just so happens that the rates are lowest in Dubai and compared to most other jurisdictions. So businesses thinking about moving here, have anything to fear. Governments that's really trying to encourage businesses on all fronts. I mean, one of the things that I've seen here is the number of sort of social media entrepreneurs Most of them are leaving the US and Europe and moving to Dubai. There's a reason for that, because the government has made it so easy for people to be here, and they're so embracing of everyone. You know, the society, there's not any sector of business that will struggle here. Whatever you're doing, Dubai is a place to thrive.
From an industry point of view, I think it's very important that tax teams and the concept of tax readiness is well digested all the way from a C-suite point of view, all the way down to sort of, you know, your legal, whatever back office function. Everyone needs to now be aware of the fact that tax is here. It's been here for 5 years, and there should be enough readiness, you know, through the organization. And it should be readily discussed, you know, in board meetings and other as well, across the, because I think it's very important as more. The other thing is keep apprised of the bulletins that come out. They're very helpful, and they got worked examples as well. So, you know, they're again reducing complexities, driving simplicity. So the tax bulletin has been very helpful, you know, for 0 rated to what's exempt, with examples, which is great, you know. So out there, if you're in-house or if you're working in industry, make sure you're keeping up to the bulletins that are released or that come out.
Amazing. So thank you for that, guys. It's been amazing you both here and giving your insights and your personal experiences, and hopefully the viewers have taken some benefit from that and give them something to think about and something to dwell on as well. And I still have you guys back again as well to talk about different topics.
Inshallah, yeah.
And share some of your experiences. But it's been a pleasure, as I say, having you guys here today. And thank you, the viewers, as well, for watching. Thank you and goodbye.